Yo, what is going on, you guys? It's your boy King Sanders here, and we are back with a little bit different of a video. I gotta be honest, I got this idea from Six Rings of Steel, so shout out to him. What I'm basically going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a 2020 NBA redraft, as if I were, like, if I knew. I'm going to do it a little bit different though. So basically the way that I'm going to do it is based off of everything that we know now, who I think each individual team should have taken as of last year. So if we just knew that as of last year they were going to be this good, we should have took them here, etc., stuff like that. So it is going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit weird. And I'm in a new spot. I'm at my girlfriend's house because my Wi-Fi doesn't work at all. We live in the boondocks right now, and there's literally like nothing that I can do when it comes to how bad my Wi-Fi is. So using hers for right now. So like I'm just so blessed to be able to actually still do it. So I'm gonna try to get some more frequent videos popping. I'm really excited for it, but I don't want to ramble too long. So here, I don't know why it says 2017 NBA Draft Machine up at the top. I'm assuming that ESPN really just hasn't updated their thing like in a while. So I have no idea, but as of right now, it is the 2020 draft. It's just in the wrong order. So, okay. So we're going to get started into it. We're really just going to kind of dive straight into it and kind of what I think each individual team should do. And it's kind of hard to argue, especially with like where they went originally versus where they should end up now. But I'm just going to hop straight into it. So the first team is obviously Minnesota. They got the first overall pick this year. And I got to be honest, I think that Anthony Edwards was probably the right pick. You could definitely make a huge argument for LaMelo Ball, and I would not tell you you're wrong. The only thing is I know that D'Angelo Russell is locked up on a pretty decent contract. So since he does have a pretty decent contract, he's going to be around a while. The last thing that you really want is LaMelo, like, as a playmaker, and D'Angelo Russell, who's also a playmaker. I don't really foresee them being a very good pairing, whereas Anthony Edwards is an off-ball scorer, a really good off-ball scorer, and on top of that, his defense is actually pretty nice. So I do think that Minnesota probably made the correct pick there, so I'm going to go with Anthony Edwards at 1. I really like that pick a lot. Next is Golden State, though. Golden State is very interesting because, as we all know, Steph Curry has played as kind of like an off-ball player like before. Not necessarily, like, he's always been the point guard, but there's been times where, especially when he was with like Kevin Durant would kind of be one of the main ball handlers, and Steph Curry would honestly kind of play the 2. Or like Draymond would play point, stuff like that. So we've seen Steph Curry play off-ball, and he's really, really good at what he does. So I don't hate the idea of LaMelo Ball going to Golden State. I really don't. I think that LaMelo Ball and Golden State, pairing it up with LaMelo, Steph, Clay, Draymond Green, Wiggins, potentially Oubre if he ends up staying, and then obviously they would still have a center issue, but Eric Paschall is actually going to be like a serviceable big in the future. So we will have to obviously wait and see kind of how all that works out, but I think that LaMelo Ball and Golden State might actually be a pretty good assignment. So the third pick is going to be Charlotte. Charlotte is interesting because Charlotte has as of right now, they have like a pretty decent point guard in Terry Rozier or Devontae Graham, whichever one you want to call, and then obviously they have a pretty decent shooting guard in the other. They have Gordon Hayward, who unfortunately got injured for a lot of this year, but he was still a very good player. They have PJ Washington and Miles Bridges, who probably have the small power forward spot pretty much locked up for the next multiple years. And they have Cody Zeller, who isn't necessarily the best big, but he's actually a pretty decent big. So it's kind of hard to figure out what the Hornets really need other than like time itself. So I feel like if Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball were to go 1 and 2, respectfully, I do think that Charlotte would actually more than likely benefit from drafting either a guard or a center. So The thing is, especially for me, is I think that I don't know if James Wiseman would be a better fit for a Charlotte team. The Charlotte team, the problem with Charlotte is they don't have any defense. They don't play any defense whatsoever. So if I was redoing this draft, I would probably go with either Tyrese Halliburton or Onyeka Okongwu, just because those two have really good defense, and it's going to be a spot where I think that they should really address is either the center or the guard spot. So if LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards were gone, who are the clear two best players in this draft, I think I would probably go with Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton had a very good season this year, was absolutely phenomenal almost the entire season. And I think he only got hurt maybe once, and it did keep him out for a little while, but I don't think that it was anything too crazy. I think that him at 3 is actually really good value. I do think that he should have been probably in the top 5 somewhere, maybe top 10, but he ended up falling to, was it 12, I think? I'm pretty sure it was 12. So I think that he would make a super increase, a super jump if they were to ever do a redraft today. Next is my Chicago Bulls. So this is crazy. This is actually crazy. But I gotta be completely straightforward with everyone right now. So I love the Chicago Bulls. I will probably never ever go away from them. I was really happy with the Patrick Williams pick. I seriously was, and even at the end of the year, I'm really still super happy for the Patrick Williams pick. The thing is we really needed a point guard. We did. And that was a huge issue, obviously, but at the same time, at the time of the draft, our small forward was Chandler Hutchinson or Otto Porter. That's a huge issue. I mean, Otto Porter's contract is ginormous. It's a really bad contract. And on top of that, he's not a very good player. Chandler Hutchinson, he was a lot better once we traded him away. He just did not play very well for us in Chicago. So I think that the thing is we really needed a point guard. And you could have gotten some great point guards out of this draft. But the thing is for me, if I were to redo the draft and those 3 were taken off, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and Tyrese Halliburton, I would definitely 100% still go with Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams was really good for the Chicago Bulls this year. He was really good. He was a really good, a tremendous 3-and-D guy. He's one of the most ideal 3-and-D guys that you could ever get. I absolutely love Patrick Williams. I think he has so much potential in the entire world. He's already a really good shooter. He's a really great defender. He can play really good defense on anyone's best player, and he's just going to do that with ease. Zach LaVine is pretty comfortable with re-signing with the Chicago Bulls, even though he's going to be a free agent. Is it this year or the year after? It might be 2 years from now. But he's very comfortable with re-signing with the Bulls, and he's willing to take a pay cut as long as the Chicago front office gets him some help. So really, they just need to figure out that point guard position. So I think Patrick Williams is going to be the small forward of the future for the Chicago Bulls, and I think that he has nothing but upside from here. The next spot is Cleveland. Now, the way that Six Rings did it was he was kind of going with, this was before they had Jared Allen. This was at the time of the draft, who would they draft? I'm doing it a little bit different. I'm doing as if their rosters were set right now, who would they pick? So with the next one for Cleveland, see, the thing is they have a backcourt that's pretty much locked up. I mean, Darius Garland and Colin Sexton are very good players. They are. They have Larry Nance, who's average. They have Jared Allen, who's a really good young center. So they really need some more wing options. And with everyone left here on the board, I got to be honest. I mean, I don't want to pick Isaac Okoro, because I truly don't. I think that he was not the best. For being a top 5 overall pick, he did not really do very well. And I definitely was just expecting a lot more out of him. And so it makes it hard. I don't think I want to pick him. They do have some really good players here, but I think that the player that I would go with, if I was Cleveland, you really need a 3-point player. You need a wing, And so why not get both of them in the same player? So I would go with Aaron Nesmith here, out of Vanderbilt. Tremendous shooter. He can play defense. So he's literally just an upgraded version of Isaac Okoro. I think that Isaac Okoro has a lot of room to build. He just has to get the scoring aspect of the game down. And it's hard to go from college to NBA threes, especially if you're not shooting a high volume of them. And that was kind of the issue with Cleveland. So I think that Aaron Nesmith would be a tremendous pick in Cleveland. I think that it would make them have like sort of a win now mentality with Kevin Love, with Jared Allen, Darius Garland, Colin Sexton. I think that if they had Aaron Nesmith, I think that they could potentially be just outside the playoffs. So I think that it would improve their roster by a lot. The next pick that we have is Atlanta. Atlanta is interesting. It's very interesting because Atlanta, obviously they have Trae Young. Trae Young is phenomenal. And then they have pretty much every position locked up right now. So they have Bogdanovich. They have they have DeAndre Hunter, but he's been injured and stuff. So they have Kevin Huerter. They have John Collins, who I'm not really sure if John Collins is going to end up staying, but if he does, they'll have him as well. They have Clint Capella. So they have a very full team. So it's kind of hard to make a pick for a team that, that they're not really sure, and they already have their roster set. Sorry. So it would be an interesting thing if they were to redraft. Who would they go with? I think that if they were going to go with like a redraft of any sort, I think that they would probably want to get another scorer. I think that they have Kevin Huerter, who's a really good scorer. They have Bogdanovich, who's a really good scorer. They obviously have Trae Young. But I do think that they may want to add either another scorer or maybe add some more defense. They may want to add some defense. So I could understand if I could definitely understand if they went with like Isaac Okoro in this instance, just because he is a really good like 3-and-D type of player. Maybe not really good. After this year, he wasn't really that good. But they may want to add some more defense, especially for a guy to come off the bench and play defense for them. Plus, we don't know the health status of DeAndre Hunter, of Cam Reddish, stuff like that. So, I think if I was to do this, I think I would probably go Isaac Okoro. Like I said, they don't know the health of their players. They don't really know a whole lot of They don't really know a whole lot of their future on the team. So even though they're having a really good playoff run so far, it does just make it interesting because we don't really know. So now the next pick is pretty interesting. We have Detroit here on the clock. Obviously, they took Killian Hayes from France at the 7th pick, who I do think was a good pick. I mean, with everything that we saw from his highlights from overseas, I do think that he was a really good pick at 7. The only thing is he got injured a lot, and we don't know how everything's gonna pan out. When it comes to, is he gonna stay healthy? Is he not gonna stay healthy? How is it all going to work? So it does just honestly make me kind of question all of it. So I think if I was to redraft and I knew everything that I knew now, I think I would want to go with a player that I know is going to be healthy, that has a lot of upside, that has a lot of potential, that's going to be a very great scorer. Because at this point in time, the only good player that Detroit has is Jeremy Grant, really, and it makes it hard. So I think I would go with a pure bucket getter. I think I would go with Tyrese Maxey at 7. Tyrese Maxey was a really good player this past year for the Sixers, especially once the whole COVID situation happened and no one else was able to play. Dude was dropping 40 points. He was going absolutely crazy. Absolutely insane player. Really good. I think that he has a lot of upside. I think he's going to be a very, very good point guard in the soon future. So I really like him a lot. So next at 8 we have New York. New York's also interesting because Julius Randle just had the season of a lifetime. Obviously, I think that they were going to try to get rid of him after this year anyway. They were going to try to, in this situation, go with a full-born rebuild around Obi Toppin. But that's not really the case at all, actually. Julius Randle, he won Most Improved Player. He led his team all the way to a 4 seed, I think. So that's kind of the issue. Is do you take at 8? You don't want to take a power forward, obviously, because they've got that pretty much locked up. They have R.J. Barrett, who's kind of playing the 3 right now. They had Emmanuel Quickly and Reggie Bullock, and then Derrick Rose at the 1. So what do you really do? I think if I was on the Knicks, or if I was the head of the Knicks, I think I would probably want to go with a center. I think that Nerlens Noel is a really good player. I think that he, or a really good defensive player. I think he'd be really good off the bench and a bench role. But the thing is I think they would need one more scorer on a team like the Knicks to be able to really, really compete for that championship spot. So I'm going to go James Wiseman at 8, to the New York Knicks. I think that would be very top-notch. I think that would be the most ideal situation for New York. They'd be getting a really good center, as long as he can stay healthy, which is another big question mark with James Wiseman. But James Wiseman on the Knicks with, Julius Randle, Derrick Rose, Reggie Bullock, R.J. Barrett. That's just setting you up for the future, obviously, other than Derrick Rose. But I'm sure that they can get another good point guard in this next draft. There's a lot of good ones. So I think that if James Wiseman were to somehow fall to 8, they would definitely scoop him up. And I think everyone else in front of them doesn't really need a center that bad, other than maybe Detroit, maybe Charlotte. I could see Charlotte kind of taking him. But I do think that Golden State would not pass up on LaMelo Ball again. So, number 9, we have Washington. Washington is interesting. They took Deni Avdija out of Israel in this last draft, and I don't think it was a terrible pick. I really don't. The thing is I wanted him for Chicago. I'm glad he didn't go to 4 because I do like Patrick Williams a lot. I've started to fall in love with Patrick Williams. But the thing is Washington, obviously they have Westbrook, obviously they have Beal. They're not going nowhere. But then after that, they have Raul Neto. They have Thomas Bryant, who unfortunately got injured. They had Deni Avdija, who got injured. They have Davis Bertans. They need a full-blown rebuild after this. Other than of course, Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, I think that they need some defense. And the Washington Wizards were the worst defensive team in the league this year. Or at least I'm pretty sure. I'll have to fact check that, but I'm almost positive. So I think if I was making this pick at 9 with Washington, I think I would go Onyeka Okongwu. Not only do they need a center, because you don't know if Thomas Bryant is going to be, is he going to be, is he going to be healthy? How good, is he going to come back, fully, and all of that. There's just so many question marks around Thomas Bryant right now. You'd have to take the safe option. You'd have to go with Onyeka Okongwu. It would add defense to the team. Oh, and they have Rui Hachimura. I'm really dumb. I can't believe I just forgot that. But you have to make sure that you get some defense on the team. You have to make sure that you have a starting center. So I think that Onyeka Okongwu is actually perfect. Next is Phoenix. Phoenix is interesting. Obviously, they made a super big run this year, and they have just been on an absolute tear. Which is something that I personally didn't see for a while. I said at the beginning of the year, at the very beginning of the year, and I made a video on my laptop, but I never posted it because we were moving. I didn't have very good Wi-Fi. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. It was really long, so I had made I'd made a thing saying that Suns were my favorite team, my second favorite team. But I made that before the start of the season. I have a couple friends I told that to. So Phoenix, interesting. So they have pretty much the entire starting five locked up. They have Chris Paul at the 1, obviously Devin Booker. They have Mikal Bridges. They have Jay Crowder, and they have DeAndre Ayton. Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton are your building pieces right now. Maybe Mikal Bridges too. So you definitely want to get like a backup point guard for whenever Chris Paul leaves, or you definitely want to get a young prospect and a power forward. So this one was a kind of a tough one for me, because you could have went with Pokazevsky. I do think that he's a really good player. But the thing is for me, I think I would rather take a backup point guard that would be able to just fill in that spot for Chris Paul as soon as he leaves. So my favorite point guard going into the draft this year was actually Kyrie Lewis Jr. He didn't get a whole lot of time behind LaMelo Ball, or Lonzo Ball, of course. But I do think that he has a lot of upside. But I'm actually going to take Killian Hayes. Killian Hayes is kind of the safe pick. You know kind of what you're going to get out of him. And he does have a lot of upside as well. It's just a matter of we just don't really know how all it's going to turn out so far. We just don't. So I think I'm going to go with Killian Hayes for 10 at Phoenix to back up Chris Paul until he leaves. And then after that, it'll be a lot easier. So now we're kind of getting into the 11 through the 30 pick right now. So I'm going to make these a lot quicker. I know that, my last video with the Derrick Rose one was like 3 hours long. I don't want to make it that long this time. So pick 11, San Antonio. They obviously have DeJounte Murray pretty much locked up, but that's pretty much the only position. Maybe Jakob Poeltl, but I doubt you'd want to really rebuild around Jakob Poeltl. So this next one was pretty interesting to me, but I think if I was in this situation, I would probably go with Emmanuel Quickley. And you could make the case Emmanuel Quickley could have went a little bit higher. I wouldn't be mad about that at all. But I do think I would maybe put Emmanuel Quickley alongside DeJounte Murray. I feel like that'd be a really good core to build around. The Spurs do have a lot of guard play in general, but you never really know. I just don't know. It's one of those things, it's just kind of tough to decide. Just because Emmanuel Quickley, I think he fell to 23, I think. So from him to go up to 11, he was a phenomenal player this year. I just think that he would probably fit best on one of these two teams, maybe, and they're interchangeable in my opinion. They're both going to be bucket getters. Killian Hayes is a little bit more, well, actually, they're both really good playmakers, so they're pretty interchangeable for me. I think that Killian Hayes has a little bit more of an upside just because of his build, but I could be totally wrong about that. So I could even see Emmanuel Quickley going as high as like 6 to Atlanta, but I just don't know what Atlanta would even do in this situation. They're not going to replace Trae Young. So 12, we have Sacramento. Sacramento is another interesting one. De'Aaron Fox is not going anywhere. He is not going anywhere. He has no intention on leaving. Very good very good point guard. They have Marvin Bagley, who sounds like he's going to be leaving. They have Buddy Hield, who's starting to get a little bit older. Harrison Barnes is getting older. So I feel like they would need some wing play. So I thought long and hard about this one. I really did. And I think that if I were to rebuild this and I were to pick, I think I would go with Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane fell all the way to, was it the second round, maybe? I think he fell to the second round. Desmond Bane was actually extremely good this year. He shot super efficient, very good player, can play defense, and I think that he has a lot of potential, especially if he gets more shots. He was playing behind Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks, if you guys have ever watched a Grizzlies game, he does not pass the ball. He shoots it every single time that he touches it. So he didn't really get a whole lot of shots, but when he did get shots, he was knocking those down. He's a tremendous player, and alongside such a tremendous playmaker like Fox and Desmond Bane would be a tremendous core to build around. Obviously, now they have Tyrese Halliburton, who is a very good pick as well. But if in this draft specifically, if Tyrese Halliburton were to go at 3, I think Desmond Bane would be a perfect place to pick up. 13, they have New Orleans. We have New Orleans here. Obviously, in real life, New Orleans took Kyrie Lewis Jr. I was very high on Kyrie Lewis Jr., but, I don't hate the pick. The thing is they have Lonzo. They have Eric Bledsoe at the 2. Brandon Ingram at the 3, who's going to be locked up. They have Zion at the 4, who's going to be locked up. They have Steven Adams at the 5, who's a very good quality center. So they really just need a 2. They really just need an absolute 2 all the way around. And I think that, truthfully, I think that the perfect pick for that one, like especially if you're looking for a 2, you're looking for some defense, you're looking for a good player just in general to be able to get, like you're just looking for a really good player to fill in for Eric Bledsoe, maybe make Eric Bledsoe the backup 1, however you want to do it. I think that truly the best shooting guard left on the board is probably Devin Vassell. I really like Devin Vassell. He had a good year this year. He was just a really good player. You really can't go wrong with the way that he was playing. He was efficient. He was a good player. He just didn't really get a whole lot of time, and it does kind of suck. But I do think that on a team like New Orleans, where he's probably the 6th, maybe the 7th man, I think that he would shine. I think that he would be a very, very solid player there. So, especially because he would be able to sub out Eric Bledsoe as opposed to subbing out Lonzo, probably not getting nearly as many minutes, all that stuff. So, next we have Boston. Boston at 14 was an absolute really good pick. That's just really high, especially with all these good players left. So you run into another predicament here. You have Kemba, you have Jaylen Brown, you have Marcus Smart, you have Jason Tatum, you have you have Robert Williams. So you have a pretty good starting 5. So it makes it tough when you get thrown into a pick like this and you're not 100% sure what you want to do. I personally think that they made the right decision in going with a point guard. I do think that more than likely Kimba's probably going to be gone. So with Kimba being gone, I do think that they would need a new point guard. I just think that they made the wrong choice. I think that they could have went either Cole Anthony or they could have went with Theo Maledon. I think either one would have probably been a really good pick. The problem is they were both on such bad teams that we really, or even R.J. Hampton. You could have went with R.J. Hampton, Kyrie Lewis Jr. So the thing is with Theo Maledon and with Cole Anthony, they were both really good players, but they're on bad teams, so they got a lot more chances to shine. I think in the future, just because he does have a little bit more size, I'm going to go with Theo Maledon. I think he's got a little bit more of a complete game. Cole Anthony's a really good scorer, but he has no defense whatsoever, which is, a lot of today's NBA. So I think if you can find a defensive-minded but still a good playmaking point guard, I think you're going to luck out with a good one, and I think Theo Maledon can do that. Next, we have Orlando. Orlando, kind of a crapshoot right now. They don't have any good players, so I would probably, in this instance, take the player with the highest potential out of all of them. And I got to be honest, I think out of all of these remaining players, the 2 players with the highest potential is going to either be Saddiq Bey or Pokazevsky. They're both kind of like unicorn-type players. They're both really good players, especially on their respective teams. But the thing is Orlando's in a bad spot, and I hate to say that, but they are just in a really, really bad spot. They traded away Vucevic, they traded away Fournier, they traded away Aaron Gordon. They have no pieces left other than Cole Anthony, who's I think will be a good piece to build around, but I think that if you could get a unicorn-type player like Pokazevsky or Saddiq Bey, I think you'd be looking at a better spot. So I think I'm going to go with Pokazevsky. I think that he has a little bit more potential than Saddiq Bey. Just because he is 7 foot and he's an absolute sharpshooter, so I don't know. I don't think you could go wrong with it. Next we have Portland. Portland's kind of in a crappy situation too. We don't know what's happening with Damian Lillard. We don't know what's happening with C.J. McCollum. We don't really know what's happening with any of the bigs. But for right now, because they did get Norman Powell at the 3, who I think was a really good pickup. But the thing is Robert Covington is not your answer at the 4. He's really not. He's just not a good player. He's just, I mean, there's no way around it. He's just not a good player. He stands no chance in the league. I don't know how he got so many contracts. He's literally just a 3-and-D guy, but he's a bad 3-and-D guy. He's not very efficient. I got to be honest, I'm just not a big fan of him. And I think that, truthfully, you want to get a power forward that has a lot of potential. So I'm going with Jaden McDaniels. You could go with Sadiq Bey, too, in this one. I wouldn't argue with anyone with that. But I think I would go with Jaden McDaniels. He had a breakout year in Minnesota, so he went 1 pick higher than what he did in the regular draft. And I think that, he could even be that piece for the Magic. I just think that out of this entire draft, maybe other than LaMelo Ball, maybe other than Tyrese Halliburton, I do think that Pokusevski probably has the highest potential. And if you're needing a piece to build your entire franchise around, why not get a 7-footer that can do a lot? So, Jaden McDaniels at Portland, I think, is a good fit. Next, we have Minnesota. In this case, Minnesota, I did draft Anthony Edwards at 1, so they would pretty much have the exact same roster. So they'd still have D'Lo, they'd still have Anthony Edwards, they'd still have Cat. It's just a matter of they would have to find a small forward or a power forward. And in this case, if you have all of these players left, you got to go Sadiq Bey. Sadiq Bey, I've been talking about in the last couple of picks. He's a really good player. And on the Pistons, he has been really like a breakout player. It's just a matter of, he's gotten a lot of minutes due to the fact that his team's bad, and I think that he could do that again in Minnesota with some actual pieces around him. If it was Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, and Sadiq Bey, I think that is a recipe for success for the future. It would take a little bit, but I think that that'd be a really good spot. Next, we have Dallas. Dallas, obviously, they have Luka Doncic. They have Kristaps Porzingis. They have Tim Hardaway Jr., who's okay. But they need some more. They really need some more. They need to get a player that can take some pressure off of Luka Doncic. So you kind of look for like some wing play. We don't really know what's happening with Porzingis. I mean, he hasn't been good, that's for sure. But we just don't know how well it's going to work. I mean, there's a lot of question marks around it all right now. So, I think if these were the players left on the board, I think I would probably go with R.J. Hampton. R.J. Hampton has had a really good year. He didn't get a whole lot of minutes for the Nuggets. Obviously, they were a very good team. And then he got traded to, I think it was the Magic. I'm almost positive, but I'll fact check that. Got traded to the Magic, and he's been like one of their star players. So he's actually been just phenomenal. So I think that he has a lot of upside, and you pair him at the 2 alongside with Luka, or however you want to do it. I think he would take a lot of pressure off Luka. I think it'd be perfect. Next, we have Brooklyn at 19. Brooklyn is obviously already a super team. They really don't need anything at all. It's kind of a waste of a pick. You got Kyrie, you have Kevin Durant, you have James Harden, so you have 1 through 3 locked up. Maybe you could use a center, maybe you could use a small forward. I mean, I'd probably just get the best shooter available in this instance, which is probably Deni Avdija. He's a good shooter. He just got injured, so I mean that's all Brooklyn really needs. It's just another shooter. So next we have Miami. Miami is another interesting team due to the fact that they have Jimmy Butler. They have Kendrick Nunn, who's actually playing really well. They just had a really quick exit from the playoffs just because Giannis was pretty locked in. So they have obviously their center for the future, who's really good. And in this case, they took Precious Achiuwa kind of to be that backup power forward, which is probably going to be the pick that I would go with as well. Yeah, we'll go with Precious Achiuwa. I hate to pick the same player twice, but they're not going to pick a small forward because they already have Jimmy. They're not going to pick a center. They're probably not going to pick a point guard. They're probably going to run with Kendrick Nunn. He's on a pretty like nice deal. So next we have Philadelphia. Philadelphia doesn't really need a whole lot. Maybe they could use a new shooting guard, but I mean, they have Seth Curry, so you can't argue with that. So you would probably want, just in case if they ever decide to switch and run Ben Simmons at like power forward, they may want to get another point guard. So they would definitely want a point guard or a power forward, which this draft was really heavy in as well. I think you couldn't go wrong with Obi Toppin, but I don't know about Obi Toppin yet. So I think I would probably go with one of the most skilled point guards in the draft. It's probably Cole Anthony. But it's because we've also seen a lot of him. He was on a really bad team. He played a lot, so played an absolute lot. They don't need a center, of course. They don't need a point guard. They have Ben Simmons, but if they ever decided to run Ben Simmons at the 4, run Cole Anthony at the 1, they would have a pretty good lineup. So I think that Cole Anthony makes sense for that pick. At pick 22, they have Denver. This is where R.J. Hampton was taken this past draft. And, I mean, it wasn't a terrible pick. I think it was a good pick. They just didn't ever play him. Now that Jamal Murray is hurt, I think that they should have kept R.J. Hampton. I think it probably would have helped them, but they were trying to win a championship at the time. At the time of this video, they are down 3-0 to the Suns, so it's not looking good for them, but you got to kind of plan for the future in this one, and I think I would probably go with Kyrie Lewis Jr. I've been preaching from the start. I love Kyrie Lewis Jr. He is from Alabama, obviously. He is an absolute bucket getter. Dude is so fast. He's incredibly fast. He's such a good player. He can facilitate. He can make shots. He can make layups. He can pretty much do everything. He's a little bit lackluster on the defensive end, but he's a rookie, so there's not really much you can do. So I think he's kind of the perfect pick for there. Next, we have New York again. New York is just, it's very interesting because if this were the exact draft order, James Wiseman, we already drafted him. So maybe you could get a backup point guard to back up Derrick Rose. Maybe you could get another 2. Maybe you could get another center just in case if James Wiseman doesn't work out. You could go with Obi Toppin, but he would just be another backup piece. You wouldn't even use him. So it does put you in kind of a tough spot, especially with what we have left. I think I would probably go with Jalen Smith. I think he got drafted to Phoenix, I'm pretty sure. And obviously he didn't play a whole lot because they just haven't really had a use for him. But, he's a 6'10 shooter. You can't really go wrong with that. And I'm obviously not going to pick Aaron Nesmith twice. I have no idea why he's on there twice, but he is. So I'm not picking him again. So actually, no, we're not going to pick Jalen Smith. We're going to actually go with Peyton Pritchard. Peyton Pritchard was selected to the Celtics, and I'm pretty sure the 26th pick, I think. Or maybe I don't remember. I honestly don't remember, but he was drafted with one of these picks, and I think that he actually was a really good player this year. He shows a lot of heart, shows a lot of hustle. It's just a matter of what that team really needs. They don't need a power forward because Julius Randle is a monster right now. They wouldn't need a center if they got James Wiseman. They don't need a small forward. They have R.J. Barrett. They could use a shooting guard, so maybe Peyton Pritchard could play the 2, or Derrick Rose could play the 2 because Derrick Rose has done that before, and he's a really good bucket getter, so you can't go wrong with that. Next, we have Milwaukee. I mean, what can I really say? Milwaukee, they have Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis. I mean, what more do you really need? The thing is I feel like Giannis would need more shooters around him in order for him to be a championship team. I think he's got Dante DiVincenzo, who I think is a really good shooter. It's just, I think that they just are a couple pieces away. They have Bobby Portis, who's been playing really, really well. So I think if I were to make this next pick as the Bucks GM, I think I would go with a center, either a center or a stretch big. Oh, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. I think I'll go Xavier Tillman. Xavier Tillman has been really good for the Memphis Grizzlies this year. He's been a kind of like a bang down low sort of big. Obviously, he's been backing up Jonas Valanciunas, so he hasn't really gotten a whole lot of time. But when he did play, he was actually really good. So I think that'd probably be a pretty good pick. So nothing I can really do or say from there. So 25, Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City needs everything besides a shooting guard right now. Or if they decide to run Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the 1, they really just need anything else other than that. So they have a lot of work to do. Al Horford is not the answer at center in any way, shape, or form. They need another, probably like a playmaker or just a player that can kind of do it all. So they need a lot. But I think that if I were in this situation, I think that the center that I would pick would probably be either Udoka Azubuike or Isaiah Stewart. I think they were both really good picks for their respective teams. But I don't know. Or you could go out Obi Toppin, but I just don't. Or Jalen Smith. I just don't really see a whole lot of potential in those guys. Especially Obi Toppin. I just don't know how good of a player he's going to be. I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that he is a really great player. Actually, we'll take him. We'll take Obi Toppin. Maybe he can be that piece to pair alongside of SGA, and maybe they can build something out of it, but I just don't foresee it. He's, 24, something like that. He's going to be 25 by the time the season starts. SGA is around the same age, 25, 26, something around that age. SGA is a really good player. Obi Toppin we haven't seen enough of him. He was pretty good in the playoffs, but I just don't foresee anything happening with him. Next, we have Boston. Boston, in this instance, took Theo Maledon in the first one, so you'd probably be looking for maybe a backup center. Wouldn't be a bad option. And I think you would need some defense, so why not draft a really good defensive center in Udoka Azubuike? I think that he had a really good season for the amount of minutes that he did get in, and I think that, as a defensive center, I think he would be able to do the job there in Boston. So I just really like what I've seen from him, so that's what I'm going to go with. Utah is making a championship run once again. They're trying to currently knock off the LA Clippers at the time of this recording. Game 3 is tonight, and they are currently up 2-0 against the Clippers. So I've liked what I've seen from them. They really just need, they're a pretty complete team. Honestly, they have Mike Conley, who hasn't really been able to stay healthy, but it's not that big of a deal, in all honesty. They have had Donovan Mitchell. They have 2 shooters in Joe Ingles and Bogdanovich at the 3. They have Royce O'Neal, who's a really good 3-and-D player at the 4. And then they have Rudy Gobert, who's a really good center at the 5. So, and then they have Jordan Clarkson off the bench. They obviously have the other of either Joe Ingles or Bogdanovich. So, between the two, I don't know what you would go with. Maybe a point guard, maybe a backup 4. I don't know. There's a lot of different options you could do. I just wouldn't probably go shooting guard. I probably wouldn't go with center. So I think I'm going to go with Malachi Flynn. Malachi Flynn was a late pick for the Toronto Raptors, and he's played really well. I didn't expect him to be a super good player, but he's played really well for the Raptors, and they've definitely needed it. So I think that you really can't go wrong with a guy like Malachi Flynn. Comes off the bench, gives you absolute buckets. So next we have the LA Lakers. The Lakers, they need a lot of help. They really do. The Lakers obviously just lost in the first round to the Phoenix Suns. They have LeBron. They have Anthony Davis. Then the rest of the team is kind of just out there. They could literally go in any direction. And I think that they need a true center presence. I think that that's one of their main issues. Andre Drummond, he puts up good numbers, but it's just empty stats in my opinion. He doesn't really do a whole lot. And personally, I just really think that the Lakers should go in a different direction. I mean, they need to keep LeBron and Anthony Davis, of course, but the rest of them, they can all kind of be switched out. KCP is, he's just another guy. Kuzma's just another guy. And I think Kuzma would be really good on another team. They just have a lot of things that they need to do. So, in my opinion, if this was my pick, I would probably go with either Leandro Balmaro as a new 2 guard, or I would probably go with Isaiah Stewart, and I think that's the pick I'm going to go with, is Isaiah Stewart. I think that he provides a really strong defensive center presence, and that's exactly what they kind of need, is just someone who can rebound the basketball, who can play defense, and Andre Drummond, he can get rebounds. He has no problem getting rebounds, but he's not really that physical. He's kind of soft. His defense isn't very good. So, like with all of those factors, it just makes it kind of hard for me to pick that. So, the next one is we have Toronto. Toronto is kind of in a really sketchy spot. We don't know what's going on with Kyle Lowry. We don't know how the rest of the team's going to play out. But they are missing, and they have Chris Boucher, but like they're still missing like another center. I feel like they are like one really good center away, or they're like another point guard away. But with the picks that they have left, I don't think that they would want to go with another point guard. So, like based off of everything that I have here, I know that there's some that obviously aren't on here that turned out to be all right players, but based off of what we have here on the screen, I'm not a huge fan of any of these point guards. I don't think that if this were the situation, I don't think Toronto would go with a point guard. I think that if they were to go with anyone, they'd probably go with Zeke Naji. I think that Zeke Naji was a really good, well, I shouldn't say really good, but he was a pretty serviceable player for the NBA this year, and I thought he was a pretty good rookie. He put up pretty decent numbers. He just didn't really have a whole lot of time to shine, and so I think that especially once his team goes into like a full rebuild based off around him, or he just gets more and more minutes as the time goes on, I think that he's going to turn into a pretty good center. So with the last pick in the first round, and this is all I'm really going to do, I'm only going to do the first round. That's just because I know this video is kind of long. So the last pick is Boston. In this draft, they've already selected Theo Maledon. They've selected Udoka Azubuike as a defensive center. So now they have the 30th pick. I think you just go with some wing play. It's pretty easy, honestly. In my opinion, I wouldn't even think twice about it. I would probably just go with Leandro Balmaro. I think that he has a lot of potential. He has a really good chance to be just a good player. And I think that landing him with 30 is really good value. He brings a lot to the table. So this is going to be my draft. I hope that you guys did enjoy it. If you guys didn't agree with anything, let me know. I'm sure that a lot of you guys would do something different. I'm not opposed to it, all right? This is just what I personally think. If I were the GM of each individual team, this is exactly how I would play it. If you want to move someone up higher, go for it. I'm completely fine with that. And I wouldn't argue with you in any stretch of the imagination. It was kind of a weird draft, kind of a weird year. The only other players that I could maybe consider getting on board with that I didn't pick, I feel like Nico Mannion has a chance to be pretty good. I just don't know yet. Jalen Smith has potential to be good, but he was for the Suns, who didn't play him. And then Trey Jones has a chance, but he's kind of just a smaller guy. We'll just have to wait and see on him. Tyrell Terry and Vernon Carey Jr. So those are going to be my that's going to be my first round redraft if I were to do a draft. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you guys know whenever I post. But yeah, hopefully I'm back in my new setup by the next video. I doubt it, but we'll have to see. So for now, this is going to be it. Thank you so much. This is King Center signing out. Peace.